Still on the subject of high school, I don't know if you all heard of this story. This actually broke a while ago. You can see the date. This is from like 2024. But I never got around to talking about this. But it's somewhat not too far from home. I think that's why the story came across my desk a while ago. Even though I think it gained a bit more national news somewhat recently. So, if you haven't heard, this Hartford public school grad can't read. Damn, that's a hell of a headline. Here's how it happened. I should have be sure to say her name. I'm assuming it's just Alicia. Alicia Ortiz, lawyer, said the young woman's story may be one of the most shocking cases of educational neglect she's has seen in 24 years. Is there a video attached to this? Scroll over to. Jesus, they really made it.
Slides. It's a PowerPoint.
Okay. Alicia's story. So this young lady who came to Hartford from Puerto Rico with her family when she was young struggled with language and other challenges along the way. But a confluence of circumstances, apparent apathy, and institutional inertia pushed. I never heard that one. Institutional inertia. I like that alliteration. Pushed her haphazardly to the school system. According to Ortiz, her attorney and district officials, Ortiz can't read even most one-syllable words. Holy moly! This little girl can't even say cat. The words she can read were memorized during karaoke from subtitles at the bottom of TV screens and associated the words she saw what she heard. You know, I heard a lot of ESL folks learn English through just watching TV. I don't understand why it's not as simple to learn Japanese to watch anime though. But that's a whole different thing. Keep going. Elementary, middle school. Ortiz was never taught to read or write despite attending schools in Hartford since she was 6. So for you tell if you from 6 to 18, this little girl was never taught to read? Holy moly. She was diagnosed with a speech impediment and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, in early childhood and has been classified as a student with disability for as long as I can remember, she said. While other students made friends and learned basic math and reading skills. That's the other crazy part. If you don't know how to read or write, where are your math skills at? Or do you guys think you can actually be proficient in math even if you can't read and write?
I don't know how you would.
Let's see. Ortiz. Oh, sorry. Preparing for high school, Ortiz tried to use picture books to teach herself how to read. Dang, this little girl trying to teach herself. That must be really hard if you dad cannot read teaching yourself. Go to my pops. That's one of the 2 things he taught me. Picture books to teach herself how to read. When she wasn't successful, she got through her freshman year of online learning through the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID high school student. With Google Translate, she can scan a photo and read the text out loud. Sophomore year was Ortiz's first time doing the same work as everybody else. So she made it through the whole freshman year using Google Translate, by the way. I would go to class, I would record and try to memorize everything the teacher said and what they wanted to write. Then, when I went home, I would stay and hear the recordings. Basically went to school 2 times in one day. Well, at least they had dedication if this is true. What else? Systematic shortfalls. In a recording of a June 6th meeting with the district special education administrator, Ortiz can be heard. I wonder if we'll get to hear it. Saying she would deny the right to a fair education. What does that mean? When teachers didn't teach her how to write, when disabilities testing wasn't done accurately, and when she felt ashamed by educators after she brought up how her individualized education plan wasn't being followed correctly. Okay, so they put her on like some type of academic probation or plan, but they didn't actually follow through with it. Dang, is anyone feeling like they're about to cry yet? Conversations with school officials were often riddled with miscommunication, frustration, disagreement, with several instances of people speaking over one another or Ortiz leaving the room in tears. Dang. There was a lot of pushback stating that the district doesn't provide that the school at the high school level that they would need to get creative in how they would provide these services to her. So basically, they were like discussing how they would go about teaching the little girl how to read, but they didn't actually come to a consensus. There's always a kind of lingering talk of something would be done, but there was never anything proactive being done, a social worker said, or who worked with Ortiz said. Graduation, because this little girl did graduate. Ortiz was able, and she looks happy there. Ortiz was able to graduate because she had met all her credit requirements. How do you meet are some of the credit requirements not English class? English language arts? But she says she was only able to survive high school through the use of speech to text application in a calculator. Okay, so they apparently can do math. I wonder if they had a what's it called? I haven't even used my calculator in a couple months. A TI 80. And though limited, the accommodations helped Ortiz become a honor. So hold on. So we're talking about an honor roll student that cannot read or write. Some not adding up, and led her to her acceptance to several colleges, including the University of Hartford, Connecticut. Fun fact: West went to UHart, which she began as a part-time in August. Can West read or write? I'm just joking. Ortiz filed for due process against the district in late June, which is an illegal procedure in special education that's triggered when families feel their right was violated. Ortiz told the Connecticut Mirror, or CT Mirror, that she shared her story so her experience doesn't repeat in other children's. Fun fact, it actually does. It's knowing that more kids are falling through the cracks of the system, and we are still making it seem like everything's great, and that we're doing better for the next generation. And I always wanted to ask when, Ortiz said. So if this story doesn't tear at your heartstrings, I can actually imagine it not, and I can imagine what will. So, pardon me. So yeah, this story broke a few, obviously, months ago. The little girl made it all the way through high school, literally 4 years, and was able to get college accepted. Although they claim they cannot read and write, and obviously for this particular instance, it was large because of, I believe, the ESL factor. But it seems like there's some evidence that suggests they were diagnosed with some level of speech impediments and just mental disorders. Pull up the other story. I guess it just makes sense to go through both of them all at once. So the story did in fact repeat itself. I had to double check to see if this was like the same story or a different story, but this is happening. I didn't know it's happening on a yearly basis. A high school student in Tennessee is suing his school district after graduating the 3.4 GPA, which is not bad whatsoever, yet couldn't read or write. A school system that prides itself on 100% graduation rate is in hot water after. Should high schools have a 100% graduation rate? That's interesting. Anyway, after a student who couldn't read or write graduates with a 3.4 GPA and turned around and sued his school districts, the Clarksville Montgomery County school system in Tennessee is being sued by a former student referred to as William A. Despite graduating in 2024, so this was literally last year. Despite graduating in 2024 with 3.4 GPA, William is unable to read due to his undiagnosed dyslexia. The lawsuit alleges that the school district failed to provide him with the free, appropriate public education as required by federal law in February 2005, and a federal appeals court ruled in William's favor, affirming that the school had not met its obligation under the Individuals with Disabilities Act. Oh, I've heard that before. What are your thoughts? So yeah, it seems like this is not a one-off case. You do see the instances where people are literally graduating high school. Some people with honor rolls, some people with, mildly decent GPAs, and they just cannot read or write. And the fact that it's happening across the country is significant, because they always talk about schools in the South. I'm just saying what they say. No offense to all the Southern listeners. The educational system is just not taking it serious, and obviously, a lot of schools are in South or more rural areas. I say a lot about Florida too, so I don't know what's happening down there. But yeah, you've seen these kids that literally can't read or write, and that's kind of unfathomable to me. I'm not saying I was the best student at all, but I feel as if I couldn't read the books that they required us to read. The classics like Mice and Men, they make you read. What was the one we're holding? A Catcher in the Rye. Yes. You had to read those back in the day, so I don't know how you were able to pass without reading those. I guess you could hop on Spark Notes, but if you can't read the Spark Notes, then you're really in trouble. Anyway, so but going based off these stories and just based off the idea of a literal student, graduating high school without being able to read, what do you guys make of these stories and that type of situation? And in particular, I'm curious to know, who do you guys put the fault, blame on in this scenario? Who should be held? Should the schools be held? Well, we'll take it one step at a time. Who do you guys feel is most at fault in a scenario where a student graduates high school and they can't read or write? Let's start with you guys.
It's tough. If I had to assign blame, I'd say majority of it would go. I'd say the majority of it will go to the government first, then the public schools specifically. I guess the public school system / the government first, then the public schools and the teachers specifically.
What do you mean when you say government? What do you mean, like the Board of Education? Like what part of the government?
Well, big reason why a lot of these stories come about and why they're happening is because of the No Child Left Behind program.
Oh yeah,
was I believe, a government program that was instituted, and the intent behind it was, in theory, good, but in practice, it leads.
So what do you want them to do? Leave children behind? Sorry.
Well, what's the alternative? That literally not learning how to read and write. It's a very difficult situation. Like, even though I said I assign blame to them and then the teachers and the schools, it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm putting 90% of the blame on the government and the way that our school systems are set up, because it's kind of a trickle down effect where you say, how does a student get through school without learning how to read or write at all? Or even if they do know how to read and write, we hear all these stories of students having like a fourth grade reading level when they're graduating high school. Number one is because they're kind of forced through the system because of No Child Left Behind and because of all these government programs. And there's not really any resources that the school have to allocate towards teaching the students who are left behind, quote unquote, properly, because, again, of the way our school system is set up. Like, I'm not a teacher. I don't know the ins and outs, but I know the basics, and I know that teachers don't have the time, resources, or capability to individually tutor separate students one by one after school, whatever, that don't have the ability or don't have the time invested in them to learn how to read. And sometimes, from a personal standpoint, sometimes the parents aren't doing their job. Sometimes the parents can't do the job because they're come from another country and they don't know how to read or write English either. So even though in theory you'd like to see the parents teach the kids, sometimes it's just not an option. And if the parents don't have money to pay for a private tutor, then what are you going to do? It's like there's almost no real good options outside of more funding from the government to support teachers, to support schools, to provide resources for the students that don't have it. And if the schools don't have the resources, it's like there's almost like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the solution is.
Schools definitely
outside of teachers pitching it, doing way more than they are supposed to or they should have to spend their personal time teaching a kid separately outside of the regular curriculum, because you can't stop your entire curriculum just to teach one or two kids when the other kids have tests to worry about, they have requirements, they need to graduate as well. So it's like it just kind of snowballs into what you see here, where the high school district probably should have done more, They definitely should have done more, but it might have been a situation where they didn't really have the means to do more. So yeah, that's I guess where I'm at on it. It really sucks and it's really unfortunate, but the solution, the answer is really, when it comes down to it, money.
Do you think, or would you say that school systems, and maybe school systems have like a mission statement or objective, are like set up to support individuals, or do you think it's on a like a class?
Public schools, yeah, absolutely not. Like, this would be a situation where you, if the kid was going to a private school, they would have tutors, they would have one-on-one time to have instructors sit with them and go through things as needed at their own pace. But private schools are absolutely insanely expensive and cost stupid money. And even if you get grants, you get scholarships, a lot of people that aren't well off don't know about the alternatives, or they don't really have the means, the connections to get their kids into private school. So yeah, public schools they're absolutely not set up to help kids, individual kids. It's more just about helping the majority.
I don't like the bad rap that public schools get sometimes. I think we've all experienced some teachers in our public school education. I guess some people have more technical school, but regardless, that have helped us significantly.
Yeah, and that's
set
definitely
aside
true.
some time to actually give us a bit more attention.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And like, there's tons of teachers in the public school system that do their best, that will go above and beyond where possible to help their students individually as well as overall classes. But for one, it kind of shouldn't have to do that, and for two,
So,
not
so you
all
don't so you don't
teachers.
think schools should be set up for that?
What do you mean set up?
Set up to help individuals.
Well, ideally, a public school would have the resources to both teach classes for the general public, for the general kids, and then also, if kids need more help, additional help, one-on-one time. And some public schools do have those resources, and a lot of them don't. And the ones that don't, again, kind of goes back to money. And it's really like, just thinking of like when y'all were in high school or middle school, whatever. Let's say we you didn't know how to read or write, and your parents, for whatever reason, weren't able to teach you. Do you really think, like, given how your school systems were set up, that there would have been a chance or opportunity for you to learn outside of class how to read or write from the ground up, essentially? Like,
Yes, I actually do. At the
Um. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
no, I was just gonna say that the point about there being no like ability to have one-on-one time, I think it's a bit stretched because teachers definitely. I mean, this is maybe it's just a me thing, but there were definitely teachers that had like after school time where you could, if you were struggling or whatever, you needed help, you could go after school, stay after school, and get more individualized help. I mean, if there's other people there too, then the teacher still does somewhat have to divide their attention, but it's still more focused towards what you're struggling with. Like you could have that conversation, and
well, you're
uh,
right, but most of the time, when they're trying to help you with stuff, they're helping you with the curriculum that they're teaching, I would say, more often than not.
yeah, yeah,
So
and I
if you
think
had to teach a kid, again, that didn't know how to read or write at all, if you had to teach them from the ground up how to do that and then get them caught up on all the curriculum beyond the basics to the level that, if you're in 11th grade English, that you'd have to be at to do 11th grade English assignments, I don't think, time wise, resource wise, like, again, a lot of teachers will do their best, but to get them caught up to everyone else, to their peers, that's a lot more than just like after school time. And
Apparently, the 11th grade English ain't that big of a deal if you can graduate with a 3.4 GPA.
You're right. You're right that like not being able to read or write is an extreme case of this where, what I just said, simply staying after to talk about what you're struggling with would not be sufficient if you're talking about, okay, I'm in this particular English class where I'm supposed to be reading all this stuff and I just can't even read. Like there's no staying after that's going to help you. But in that situation, I think it should be more so, okay, this person can't even read. They shouldn't even be in this class. Like we have to put them in whatever base class we have and start from there.
Well,
and
so they gotta be in
in theory, yeah,
the
that
short,
would be
the short.
ideal.
I was gonna say the short, but
I mean,
this is
yeah, actually,
No Child Left Behind.
yes.
They don't let you do that. They will not.
So okay.
will not
I was
let
gonna
you.
ask, like, can you expound on how that's affected things? Because I'm not too familiar actually.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but more or less, the schools are going to do whatever they can to have all kids graduate, all kids be at the same level. And if a child is at risk of being left behind, there's ways that the school can go above and beyond to push them through, even when they're not ready. So a lot of times when you're like what you're saying, Ace, that a student needs to be bumped down to like, okay, you need to go to the base level, English 101, so to speak.
Yeah.
Maybe this it's possible the school wouldn't allow that, or they wouldn't let you change your curriculum around to have the kid be assigned to the class they need to be assigned to because of No Child Left Behind. So
I guess like I struggle to. This is first. I'm going to say the what we just read. Like these two examples are clearly or probably cases that illustrate that what you're saying is correct. But
it,
it does. It seems weird to me
I
that
don't know about that one.
yeah. It just seems weird to me that if the person, like in particular the first girl, like she's making it extremely clear that she can't read, like she's making it known, she's getting by in other ways but she's making it known. So it does seem weird to me that they wouldn't just uh, put her in the most remedial class and then allow her to have that, okay, even if the remedial class is like for people with severe mental disabilities, that theoretically she would be able to come up to speed by just by the fact that she clearly has more capability. She was able to figure out the Google Translate thing, so she's not and she graduated with a good GPA, so she's not dumb by any stretch of the imagination. So she knows, yeah, so she knows how to learn, so she could between her own being driven herself plus being put into a basic class where you actually would learn how to read and write as opposed to studying English as a language, then I feel like it should be a possible thing. Like it should have been a possible thing where she could have gotten through. But yeah, I don't know. Like what you just said about No Child Left Behind, that it does make some sense on how it could encourage situations like this. And I mean, for me, I was thinking like a solution would be more so that there has to be basic things that the person is able to demonstrate that they can do before graduating, and if they don't, then they can't graduate.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like read and write, like certain super basic math, arithmetic, things like that. Like they have to be able to demonstrate that. And I mean, clearly, like that's not the case, because if a person can figure out how to get through their classes without actually knowing those basic things, then there's a failure in that way, where there has to be some like standardized method to be able to determine whether a person can actually do those skills as opposed to just get through classes.
So, follow-up question to that. Let's say they have these standardized tests or whatever, end of high school. You got to be able to do X, Y, and Z to graduate. Let's say they don't pass that. Then what?
Yeah, you can't graduate them.
Okay, so they have to go back to school. What school? What class are they going to?
Like I said, it has to be there. There would have to be this basic these basic classes that would get them up to speed on those basic things. So let's say it's math. You're doing like elementary school math. Let's say it's reading. You're doing elementary school, reading and writing. Like it has to be where those classes exist, or even if it's not full classes, like summer classes or after school classes, things like this, where those things exist to get the student up to speed. And it's not, it's still classes. It's not like it has to be fully individualized, but it would have to be where you are specifically targeting those basic things that the student would needs to be able to graduate.
So they take these classes, they are able to pass the high school standardized tests or whatever. So you're telling me that the student has gotten by, we'll use this case as an example, they've gotten by 4 years without being able to read or write really at all. They do these basic classes, and then after that they graduate high school when they got through all 4 years of high school before that without these skills, and they should have had to learn stuff way beyond the basic level that they know them at now to graduate, right? So we're saying you don't have the ability to read like a first grader. Being dramatic here, you get to 12th grade,
you get that,
you don't pass. So okay, we go back to the remedial classes. You get the first grade reading level, then you're able to graduate.
Well, okay. So first of all, the standardized testing doesn't have to happen at graduation only. It could also be part of like, okay, you're in 9th grade, you take the test. If you don't pass it, then you have to.
Yeah, it'd probably be like a year-to-year basis, or
maybe
semester
exactly.
semester to
Okay.
semester.
Right.
So these remedial classes, let's say again, okay, let's say it's 9th grade, like your entry into high school. You take these, you say, okay, you're not at X level, you need to take remedial classes. Again, I'm just being dramatic, first grade reading level. You don't have that first grade reading level. You take the remedial classes to get to, in the span of a semester, whatever, you get to a 4th grade reading level. Then what? What about grades 5 through 9? You take
at some point it's got to
remedial classes, and then after that, you have 2 years of remedial classes to get you up to a 9th grade level. What about those grades 10 and 11 that you didn't have the chance to take the classes for because you were taking remedial classes the whole time before? So you're 2 years behind.
My solution almost requires that the kid be kept back at least 1 year.
That's
in an instance
the
where they can't read.
That's the thing, that it ends up being all going back to if there's no funding for these remedial classes, for these tests, for all that, and the government is telling you again, no child left behind, you have to have them push through. Like, I'm like, let's say like 10% of all high school population isn't passing these tests, and they have to stay in the remedial classes. That's a lot more pressure on the high schools to provide these classes for the kids. Kids are staying an extra year in high school. The capacity of the school is getting bigger, it's getting larger. So I'm not trying to I get where you're coming from, and I think in an ideal world, what you're saying is what it should be, but I just don't think there's any way of reasonably implementing any of this now. I think the whole system has to be basically burned to the ground.
It's not that dramatic of a difference.
I'm not always like the biggest of the context police, although I do like to have information. No Child Left Behind Act, the U.S. law, obviously initiated by George W. Bush, It was from 2002 to 2015, so currently it's not necessarily in place. Although they did succeed it with another similar act. Every child succeeds X,
So they reworded it.
basically. But hopefully they improved it.
Yeah, it's like I
I
don't
just
think
I
that there's a whole lot of cases like this, but how many cases are kids they can read and write, but they're not anywhere close to the level that they have to be at, and they end up just dropping out. And we never hear about it at all because they dropped out and they're going to work at retail or fast food.
I
Like,
think I think it's just the thing is too that you talked about, okay, let's say they can read and write now at the first grade level or whatever, and now they have to get caught up all the way through, the rest of the grades as well. While I agree to some extent, to I also, like, you can't discount that you can make up for this stuff in college as well. Like, college goes the classes you can take in college, like in particular my experience going to the community college I did, the classes that they teach, some of those classes are super 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 basic. Like, I mean, because
But
they
they
can
don't teach you
also
to
gear
read and
them.
write class.
No, they can gear the classes to foreign language people too as well. So I like, while I can't say for sure that there's, English classes where it's particularly geared to people who don't speak English, and they do bring them up from that, like, elementary school level. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing as well. So, and you can go from, up from there in college. So just because you get to a point where, okay, let's say you have a student who truly, like, you only get them up to reading and writing at an elementary school level, you only get them up to math at an elementary school level, there is still, it's not like that person is guaranteed to fail now if you graduate them and, put them out in the world. Let's say, I mean, you can't tweak their GPA, so I can't say you give them a low GPA, but at the same time, like, once they get into college and you take placement tests to get into college too, it's going to show what you can, what your ability is and where you should be placed in college. You're not going to necessarily just be able to, like, game your way through the system even through college. You can take the opportunity to get to where you need to be once you get into the college system as well.
so are you saying, just to clarify your point, are you saying that if they aren't able to get the education they need in high school, or if they only have a super basic understanding and they're able to pass the placement or the whatever exam at the end of high school, that they should make it up in college? Or are
It
you
is
saying that
possible, yes, it's possible to make it up in college, and I don't think that is necessarily a problem. Like, high schools, again, in my mind, high schools should have, like, a basic set of skills that the student needs to learn in order to be able to graduate. So maybe it is a bit further up than reading at an elementary school level. Like, maybe, okay, it's a junior high level, or there's certain English, like, analytical skills you need, as well as just the basic being able to read and writing too. Like, maybe it is a little bit more than that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be where you're able to take I don't know, Russian literature class or something and be able to keep up with the rest of the students as well. Like, the basic requirements for high school should be sufficient, such that when you go to college, you can continue on, or maybe even start back a little bit if you didn't feel comfortable with your skills when you graduated. Like, I don't think that the skill level enforced in high school needs to be so rigorous that somebody that isn't up to a high school level basically, like, would need to take 4 years of high school again, or 8 years of high school to be able to get through to the level of like their peers. That makes sense.
I can see that, but I mean, for one, we're just assuming that they're all going. These high school graduates are all going to
Going to
college.
college.
And again,
that little girl is.
Like I get your overall point, Ace. Like it is valid, but for the college argument, like say, okay, high school wasn't enough, we'll use college to get them caught up. These cases, like this girl and this other high schooler who had GPAs of 3.4 and graduated, I feel like these are with a super basic level of understanding of the English language. I feel like these are very much outliers, and a lot of these kids will have GPAs in the twos, the ones and the twos.
Yeah.
And you think that after they graduate high school, they're getting scholarships?
Yes. I mean, maybe it's not right after, but there's plenty of adults that go back to community college after they're in the workforce for a few years.
Yeah, there 100% are. I'm talking about from a money standpoint. You can't just assume that.
Not all scholarships and grants are GPA based, high school GPA based.
Not all of them, yes, but a lot of them are merit based, quote unquote, on GPA based, and you will have situations where, from a money standpoint, you're in financially you can get the
a lot of stuff. A lot of financial aid and scholarships are more so like income based.
Yeah, that's not going to be everyone.
So as long as you're not rich and I was gonna say stupid. As long as you're not rich and behind.
Like that's what if that happens? Like even not even rich, just middle class, quote.
Yeah, middle class. To be honest.
Like what about that?
Saying?
I'm saying that even if they're able to graduate high school, even if they're able to get caught up in college is not going to be an option for a lot of students. You think that a kid that went through 4 years of awful experience in high school and not getting the help that they needed is going to want to go to college?
That's fine. Then they're not going to go to college and get a scholarship that requires them to have more than a elementary / junior high reading and math level. That's not
we give them not a problem either. After a really awful school experience, they pass this test with very little knowledge and applicability that they can apply to the real world or whatever. And
what do you mean very little? If you can read and write and do basic math, that's literally the real world.
Okay, so what are we doing high school for then? What are we doing anything beyond fourth grade for? What are we doing middle school for? To get
scholarships and scholarships that require above and beyond the basics.
So the school system fails them. The school system fails them to the extent that they have a super basic level of math and reading. Super basic. They skipped out on everything else, and then they get screwed on top of that after. What?
How do they get screwed on top of that after if they can get a job? Maybe in a tech. I mean, not a tech job. But,
dog, what am I hearing right now?
Dog, you don't need advanced mathematics and reading and writing to get like a carpentry job or a HVAC job.
Again, I ask. So you're saying this? What's the point of doing high school at all? So by your logic, high school is good for one thing, and that's getting scholarships to college.
He didn't say one thing.
I meant degrees, like college degrees. Yes.
I strongly disagree.
I mean, everybody says truly, everybody says, why did I take X classes in college anyway? In high school anyway, like these different literature classes or whatever that I don't remember anything from anyway. So it's not like I'm not trying to change that and make these things more, I don't know, valuable or anything like that. In particular, like while I can say there are certain things in high school that I felt at the time they weren't very helpful to me, and I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college to get a history degree either. But I still think those things were valuable to me. So if a kid, if somebody else, because they can't read and write, they don't get to the level where I was able to take certain classes, certain history class, things like that, and get that knowledge. It is it is unfortunate, but at the same time, if the high school can get them to the basic level where they can provide for themselves when they get out of high school, they can get a job where they don't need an advanced understanding of the history of the country or mathematics, which is a lot, if not the majority of jobs out there, then you're fine. Like, the point is to get the person ready for life after school. But you don't need that much.
You say you don't need it that much. These kids haven't had the opportunity or the chance to learn anything beyond the basics, to learn what they might want to branch out into, what they might want to build a career based off of. They're literally learning how to do basic reading, how to basic write, how to do basic math. And then you're saying, okay, you graduated high school with no real prospects of doing any type of college, and there are options. Obviously, you're not like dead in the water. You can go to trade school, you can look into community college, you can do different things, but at the end of the day, you're starting way behind the eight ball compared to someone that has had a conventional college or conventional high school, middle school, whatever learning experience. And you're just saying, well, sucks to suck. Sorry about that, but
at some point, it does have to get to like.
So you must have been one of the lawmakers behind "Don't Child Left Behind."
Nah. But how is that true? Like, I am advocating for keeping the student behind. So if
he wants to leave him behind,
yeah, I mean, not leave him behind.
I guess by that logic,
make them stay back if they can't get to a certain level. I'm advocating for that, but at the same time, I think you have to be realistic about the minimum requirements that are needed for the student to graduate high school. It shouldn't be necessarily a lofty thing where they're able to take. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but like AP courses, like, or even honors courses, like if they can take the basic standard classes, get past the standardized test, they should get put out into the world. Like, they should be able to leave high school.
I mean, at a base level, you're right, but my thing isn't about what the requirements of high school graduation should and shouldn't be. It's more so they missed out on the entire fountain of. Let me slow down.
You're better.
I'm guessing.
You don't even like that stuff.
That's the thing. I don't even like it, and I still can acknowledge that there is value in learning things beyond the basics. Like, I'm not saying that they should have to know the ins and outs of Shakespeare. Like, y'all know, I think a lot of high school shit and school shit is stupid, but they still deserve an opportunity to experience that to some extent. And if we're just saying, okay, you have the very basics after 12 years of education, we didn't do our jobs, but we did them good enough to where you can graduate and you can open up a book and you can read a sentence or two.
I guess the problem is, if we're trying to have the discussion of like dealing with people that literally are at the bottom of like, can they read or write? Are you saying that should be required, or is that some? You said they should be able to experience it. Is that something required, or is it?
I'm saying the fact that the school system is able to get them to a point where we're even having this discussion where they're at a senior in high school and they don't have the knowledge of a fourth grader, that to me indicates that the entire system needs to be rebuilt, not just from the high school level, but starting. I don't get how that's a controversial statement.
No, like, it's because you're saying that the entire system needs to be rebuilt.
Yes.
You know that's not going to happen. So why don't we just do the small, like, to me, the things that I'm proposing are not that outrageous. They're not that outrageous.
They're not outrageous, Ace, but even these small things, it's like, I feel like for too long, I say we, but obviously we have no choice in the matter. We're not making any hard-hitting decisions here, but people in general, the government in general, the system that's set up in general has been too long of just kind of complacent, like, yeah, the way it is isn't great, but we have to make these small concessions to make it a little better. But it's not working. And these two cases are kind of probably extreme outliers, but how many have we not heard about that kids are experiencing this? And again, it boils down to if the schools and the system is built in a way that there's not resources that can be allocated, if there's not time that can be spent, if there's not enough teachers that can spend the time to get the students where they need to be, not just at a high school level, but at a middle school level, at an elementary level, that indicates a huge problem. That's minor little concessions. Like, I'm sure that there's probably high schools and schools that do some of the things that you mentioned, Ace.
Do.
And there's I'm not saying that every single school system is like in a bleak and desolate place and there's no hope. But overall, the way the system is constructed and the way that it's been in place is not advantageous to anyone that does not have a conventional means of learning or knowledge. And I get that it sucks, and sometimes we just say that there's nothing we can do. We got to do what we can, even if it's not much. But I think that I don't think that's just enough to say. I think that there needs to be a big overhaul instead of just minor concessions, because the minor concessions are still going to screw the students at the end of the day, even if they're a little better off than they would have been otherwise.
Nah. The problem is your overhaul. Like, can you even describe it? Like, describe what would have to happen for your overhaul to take place? Like,
maybe we shouldn't get into that because,
like, yeah, I get your point in that.
Ace is kind of leading to the discussion of, like, yeah, fundamentally large change.
Yeah, I'm not going to outline my 10-step plan here, but I'm just saying at the end of the day, like, I think the most important thing to get things started is money. That's kind of what it boils down to.
Let's put money on. Yes, money can solve pretty much everything, but
yes, it can. It really can.
I don't think it necessarily solves everything. Still, I mean, the money has to be backed up by a very, very meticulously outlined plan for exactly how.
Yeah, and you pay people the money to outline this plan. Ghost
not right.
It's really that simple. It's that simple.
If we pay a tutor for every little student in the entire United States, we'd probably be straight in that sense. But we obviously don't have the time, resource, money to do that.
All I got from this conversation is that y'all are anti-education. Pro-government. That's what I.
What? That's a crazy.
That's a cool.
I'm joking.
We got the evidence of the pod. I don't even have to defend myself. That's an insane take.
Regardless of that wild takeaway, I do like the fact that we were able to implement some level of what you guys. Because I was gonna be like some of the later questions I have, like what you guys perceive to be some level of solutions to prevent these type of scenarios, and some of them might be a bit more drastic than others, but it's better to be solution based than nothing. I think the only other thing, because we did have a pretty healthy discussion on this, you guys didn't really mention parents at all in this equation. Do they not? Are they really like without blame in a scenario like this? And I'm so like, because my experiences are literally indicative of. When it came to reading and write, that was a direct. It was all with my parent, but you guys didn't really seem to mention them. What's up? What's good with that?
Parents definitely aren't blameless, but in this case, like I guess in the first case specifically, I kind of left them out of the equation because a lot of quote unquote fresh off the boat or people that don't know how to speak the language at all. Fair or not, like they just sometimes will not learn English because either they don't have the resources or they just have a mindset of they don't want to learn it. And it'll fall on the kids to learn it themselves through school. And sometimes the kids will end up being translators for the parents because the parents, again, they're old, they're set in their ways, and they either don't want to or they just don't have the resources, the opportunity to learn. So there are some cases where I think it is extenuating, but yeah, it kind of was unsaid. But ideally, if the school system is not pulling its weight, the parents should be the ones the parents should be the ones teaching kids how to read and write, do basic math, like from when they're young. But a lot of the times that's not being done. Sometimes it's because of negligence. Sometimes it's just, again, they don't really know how to teach them. But I'm more willing to blame like the institution because of those extenuating circumstances. But yeah, like at the end of the
Well,
day, the parents, if you're in a position to teach your kids, then yeah, it's on you, kind of. But
the crazy part is, and maybe I'm just tweaking, and you guys know I am often tweaking. It I feel as if like listeners, based off what you're just saying, like you low key make a roundabout justification for like anti-immigration. Because you can come to this
what?
country, you can't read or write yourself, or be able to teach your child how to read or write. But you can earn a living, but you put them in school, and then they have tenuous amounts of struggle. I feel like a lot of people would say then you shouldn't really be allowed.
No, that is not my
and
stance.
and furthermore, is it the system's duty to be able to teach somebody that's a foreign national through that
Well,
education
if the
system?
system is built that both parents have to work to afford a place to live, and the system wants your kids to be in school for 8+ hours a day, and you don't have the opportunity to teach your kids on a daily basis for multiple hours, then yeah, I'd say the system is obligated. Ideally, then there'd be parents can stay home some days of the week, or it's not just you're out all day at work and you get home, you see your kids, you see your family for a couple hours, and you have to go to sleep and get ready for the next day. Ideally, you have time to teach a kid, you have time to go through stuff with them, but
So
that's
we'll
not the way
put
that
so we'll put
things work.
all the emphasis on the system, but we won't. But the parents can't spare.
Basically, like,
But the parents can't spare an hour.
dog, yes, a lot of parents can spare an hour, and a lot of them won't because for whatever reason they're negligence, they're too tired, they don't want to.
But
But
why?
some parents
But we
literally
can't.
can't.
But we
Some
can't
parents
just zero
literally
step.
can't.
We can't just zero step how past how much negligence is in the equation.
I'm I'm not
Listen,
I'm not trying to
I'm
Euro
not
step
trying.
past it.
I'm not trying to
I
get into the
get what
whole
you're
thing. I just
saying,
it should be something
but
we're conscious of. Like I don't think we can just Euro step like you said
I mean
past.
I am, but do you really expect parents to, like, if you're teaching a kid how to how to read, how to write, do math, it's not you spend an hour a day or even 2 hours a day and that's it. Like
Listen,
I get
I'm
it,
not a
but
parent yet,
a lot of people just aren't in a position to
and I've
even do
already
that.
spoken. I already mentioned I'm kind of speaking from a place of like my own, and I don't typically like to do that. But I'm speaking from my own anecdote. I've had a parent that they worked full time, and it was late. It was getting late at night. It was around that like 9 o'clock hour or time you getting ready for bed. They sat me down and made me read. And I wasn't going to bed unless I did that. And then speaking for myself, like I have younger siblings, and I've had to not had to, but I've helped them out with work, and I've sometimes after like a long day I'm completely pooped from work, but I obviously want them to succeed, and I didn't even have to teach myself because of some of the new math, but I that definitely has to be in the equation. Like we can't just like it's your parent. Like it's your there. Who else would be more invested in the well being and knowledge of a person outside of your parent? I would think even more so than the school system or the government.
You're right, but the way that it's set up is that it's like I'll say it's harder than it should be to do what you're saying is like that's the way parents families should be, but it's harder than it should be to do that. I'll leave it at that because you're right. Ideally your parents are, even though they're tired, even though they want to just go to sleep, they're staying up, they're helping the kids, doing this and that. But they, if you have to jump through 50 million hoops to do something that should be just a basic human requirement, there's something wrong.
I was gonna say that I didn't bring parents into this discussion because we're talking about like essentially the things that the ways in which the school system failed, and really like the ways in which these failures could be prevented in a like measurable way, that like that where you could put policies in place to enforce. Where with parents, like, yes, of course, I do believe some blame lies with them, if not a significant amount of the blame. I don't see how you enforce parents teaching the kids really anything. Like, I think that's why you have the school system, is because parents, at the end of the day, there's some instances where like the parents are just not going to teach the kids anything. So in those instances, like, the school system is supposed to be what fills in that gap, where it gets them ready for the real world, gets them ready to become an adult that can go out and work.
I got you. Yeah, if we're trying to be all just solution based, then you really can't do much at it in a person's home, but you can definitely, in theory, do a lot in the school system. So I got it. Makes sense to me. Yeah, and to be honest, there's even more surrounding these type of conversations that we could delve into. Like, in this particular case, it does mention that a judge did rule in the favor of the young student because they had certain disabilities. There's also conversations that we had whether what should be the consequence for schools or for systems in place when you do see these failures. But I think we definitely had a dope discussion thus far, and it can be something we revisit. Unfortunately, I really say that with sincerity, I don't think this would be the last case of a student that literally passes with high GPAs, high marks, but literally doesn't have the skills to even read or write, which is, again, pretty wild to me. So for now, we'll leave off from there, unless there's anything else that you really want to mention.
Real quick, I will say Massachusetts has free community college, so that does significantly help.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, not like free community college.
I don't know about that.
There are free 4-year schools you can go to in Massachusetts.
Damn.
And also, speaking of that,
why did I pay to go to BCC for a couple
This is recent.
Yeah, some of these things are really recent. Really recent.
Oh my god.
And that reminds me, I actually want to bring up some quick data. We love data on this, and if I remember, I might post this link. So you might be surprised, or after this, you might be unsurprised. 21%, which is not the worst in the world, but it is still 20+%. 21% of adults in the U.S. are illiterate in 2024, so all the way up until last year. 54% of adults in the U.S. have literacy below 6th grade level, so they can still read, but it's very low. 20% below 5th grade level. 34% of adults lacking literacy proficiency were born outside the United States, and here's where it was why you reminded me of it. Massachusetts is the state with the highest rate of child literacy, so it's a Mass. New Mexico, of all places, is a state with the lowest child literacy. New Hampshire was a state with the highest percentages of adults who are considered literate, and California is a state where the lowest literacy rate. Oh, okay, adult literacy. Okay, so New Mexico has the lowest child literacy rate, and California has the lowest adult literacy rate. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what they got going on in Cali and New Mexico, but I get the West Coast, but they need to get it together.
Yeah. We don't got a problem.
They have high immigration.
More than half the country, but we don't got a problem. We're good.
California has high immigration.
Ooh. I'm telling you, you guys are sounding like MAGA.
Dog, I'm not anti-immigration. Like, I would expect that. Like, if you come from another country, you're not going to know the language. That's perfectly acceptable to me. But
should the person from another country be able to work past high school and all these things?
Yes. they should have the opportunity. Yeah, that's my whole argument. Well, some people think that they shouldn't. So some people think that. Just
Are you talking about me again or not?
More than half, literally more than half the country, not an adult, literally, but we can just throw them out. The system's fine. The system's fine though. The system's fine.
Anyway,
are they surviving? Do they have jobs? Are they
This
providing?
guy.
anyway, unless there's anything else, we can move on to the next topic.